we live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to Africa for Palestine, a webinar on the commemoration of the assassination of Major General Qasem Soleimani of Iran and his support for Palestine. It was the 3rd of January in 2020 in Baghdad at the international airport in Iraq when the Major General Qasem Soleimani, on his way to meet Iraqi Prime Minister, the Qasem strike when he was assassinated. The US officials justifying the Qasem strike claimed it was necessary to stop the imminent attack. Some experts, including the UN Special Rapporteur, considered the assassination as likely violation of international law. Iran called the strike an act of state of terrorism. Today, Africa for Palestine, to commemorate and remember Qasem Soleimani, we are joined by Ambassador of Iran, His Excellency Ambassador Mehdi Aghajafari, and we also be joined by Comrade Tisetso Magama of Africa for Palestine, the spokesperson. Hopefully, we also will be joined by Professor Farid Esack, also a member of the board of Africa for Palestine. Unfortunately, uh, Chief Mandla, who was supposed to join us, had a death in the family, will no longer be able to join us. His Excellency Mehdi Aghajafari has previously served as a Deputy Director and General Assistant Minister at the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has previously been posted in various roles to Bahrain, Tanzania, and Malawi. We welcome you, Ambassador Mehdi, on this webinar as we commemorate the Major General Qasem Soleimani. It will be our pleasure to hear from you on what the Iranians felt during the assassination in 2020, and please share with us also the support, the well-known support of the Major General towards Palestine and his solidarity work. I'll give over to you now, Ambassador, to share with us what you know more about the Major General, and but mostly the people of South Africa would love to know what the Iranians felt during the assassination and how they, what was the feeling, what was their thinking, but mostly also share with us what what the Major General, what was the most Major General support of the Palestinian people and his solidarity work. Over to you, His Excellency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. Dear brothers and sisters, good afternoon to all. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Today, we commemorate the first anniversary of the cowardly assassination of General Soleimani. Thank you all for participating in this webinar. Let me begin my words with this undeniable fact that the enemies of the anti-terrorism world hero, General Soleimani, didn't have the ability and gut to face him on the battlefields. He was at the forefront of the war against terrorists in Iraq and Syria for several years. and had defeated them all. But in the dark of night, while General Soleimani had entered Iraq on an official visit at the invitation of the Iraqi government, he was brutally and coldly assassinated from a distance. This is the nature of the hollow and chaffy power of the United States and the terrorist and hated Trump administration. Ladies and gentlemen, General Soleimani was literally a strategist on the ground in the fight terrorism and extremism. This has been acknowledged by many military and political circles around the world. His mastery of regional issues and his fight terrorist elements upset the terrorist regimes of United States and Israel. He played a key role in defeating ISIS, Daesh, and other terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria. It was intolerable for terrorist regimes such as the United States and Israel and other supporters of terrorist groups who have spent billions of dollars on the project to destabilize the region. In addition to mastering military affairs, he was active in diplomacy and helped to reduce tensions and expand security and stability in the region. During his last visit to Iraq, he was to convey the response to the Saudi authorities through the Iraqi government. With the assassination of Martyr Soleimani, the US terrorist regime didn't allow the peaceful effort of this martyr to succeed. Moreover, the United States, by assassinating a foreign official within the sovereignty of Iraq, violated the sovereignty of this country, which is completely illegal and in violation of international law and regulations, and of course the UN Charter. We believe that assassination of General Soleimani firstly weakens the process of fighting terrorism in the region and the world, and secondly weaken the current crisis management process in the region. The United States and the Zionist regime of Israel didn't agree with either of these two subjects. They want more tensions in the region to divert attention from the Palestinian issue to other issues. Dear brothers and sisters, General Soleimani used all of his mastery and effort for the people and ideals of Palestine. Until his last day, he fought for Palestine. As one of the Hezbollah authorities mentioned, Soleimani's name is symbol of Al-Quds. Mourning of the people of Palestine revealed that how much was his importance for the Palestinians. In that ceremony, almost all of the Palestinian groups attended and condemned the illegal act of US. General Soleimani believed that defending Palestine is our honor, and we will not shirk this duty in the face of anything in the world. He promised Palestinians that despite severe pressure and sanctions, Iran will not leave Palestine alone. The martyrdom of General Soleimani is a great loss for the whole region. The assassination of fewer military commanders in the world has had such a global and international impact. In addition to Iranian, the people of the region are well acquainted with the services and sacrifices of General Soleimani and his comrades in the fight terrorism and extremism in the West Asian region, and their reaction to the assassination of this commander show that fact. The participation of millions of people at his funeral in different cities of Iraq and Iran. The mourning of millions in different countries of the region. On the one hand, shows his position in the hearts of the people, and on the other hand, it is a seal of approval for the illegality and terrorism of the US regime in Soleimani's martyrdom. Unfortunately, the countries claiming to fight terrorism by their silence on the US terrorist act showed the green light to the continuation of such terrorist acts. Their claims in the fight against terrorism are double standards and similar to their claims in defense of human rights. Just as they remained silent in the face of the assassination of General Soleimani, they also remained silent on the violation of the rights of the Iranian people by the US economic terrorism. And each of them refused to alleviate the suffering of the Iranian people, even during the COVID-19. It's a great surprise that the United Nations has not fulfilled its responsibilities to condemn and prevent the recurrence of such terrorist acts. A recent report, the UN Secretary General didn't condemn these acts, and there is no mention of the negative consequences of such actions. If all countries and the United Nations had done their duty, we would not have witnessed the assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist, Dr. Fakhrizadeh. The whole world knows the order of this crime came from whom? President Trump has repeatedly admitted that he and members of the US government national security team decided to commit such a crime in a meeting with the Secretary of State and other officials. We will not the people of Iran and the region and the lovers of Martyr Soleimani will not allow the blood of this martyr and his companions to be trampled. Although the terrorist nature of American crime is obvious to the free-thinking people of the world, their effort will shed light on the evil nature of these criminals to the majority of the world. The mask must be removed from the violent terrorists and extremists of the US. Must be removed, and its crime must be condemned more and more by the governments and free nations of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter how much time goes, the Iranian people will not give up their desire to bring the preparators, deputies, and stewards of these crimes to justice. The Iranian people call on all countries and non-governmental organizations in the world and even freedom seekers inside the United States to help bring the preparators to justice and punish them. The Iranian people reject impunity and call on the international community to cooperate and bring these criminals to justice. If the responsibility of the preparators, deputies, and supervisors of this crime is clarified and they face international punishment, the way for such crimes will be closed or at least limited. The Iranian government, on behalf of the people of Iran and the region, will pursue the prosecution of criminals and will spare no effort in this regard. Soleimani's absence, however, is a major loss in the fight terrorism and in supporting the resistance, but his path didn't stop. And other fighters raised the flag of struggle and continued his path. At last, let me express my sincere appreciation and thanks to the people and government of South Africa, who their stand in the bitter terror event of General Soleimani and Dr. Fakhrizadeh was wise, show that South Africa will stand against current cruelty wherever and by whoever be committed. I thank you all for listening to my words, and thank you, Africa for Palestine, and thank you, South Africa, to be with us in the global fight, extremism, and terrorism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Thank you for sharing with us what the Iranians are feeling, were feeling then and are still feeling now, and what you are preparing to do in going forward in always remembering Major Soleimani. But just one thing, Ambassador, if you may share with us, I'm thinking that Major Soleimani must have challenged the embassy through his support for Palestine and showing his solidarity. If the ambassador can share with South Africans listening now, what is the plan of Iran and the region moving forward in supporting and showing its solidarity to the Palestinian people, even after the loss of Major Soleimani? Ambassador? Ambassador, are you still with us?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, it's fine, Ambassador. We'll continue. We'll come back to
But
you later.
your voice is very weak for me.
Okay, we'll come back to you later, Ambassador. It's fine. Thank you very much for that. Let's go to Comrade Magama. We are joined by also Comrade Magama, who is a spokesperson for Africa for Palestine and also a member of the African National Congress. Uh, Comrade Tisetso Magama is a political activist since the early years of his life and has always had an active, dynamic, and often rewarding experience in the political and public sphere. Comrade Magama was involved in student politics and is a former regional secretary of the African National Congress. He was also the coordinator of the Release Mandela campaign during the 1980s, and he became a local government councillor in 1994. In 2000, he co-founded the Employment and Economic Empowerment Foundation, a community-based organization which initiated and managed poverty alleviation projects in Uppington. In 2009, Comrade Magama was appointed as a Member of Parliament and served on the portfolio committees on public works and international relations and cooperation respectively, and also becoming the chairperson of the latter in 2014. We are now joined by Comrade Magama, who is to share with us on the commemoration of Major Soleimani, assassination of Major Soleimani of Iran. Over to you, Comrade Magama.
No, thank you so much, Sis Dudu, and a good afternoon to His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Look, I think it's important to first and foremost, salute the ambassador and the people of Iran for indeed, going through such a difficult time following the evil slaying really of General Soleimani. Now, of course, this was subsequently followed by the assassination of the scientist Dr. Farid. This, of course, Comrade Dudu, also follows on a string of assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists, in particular, that has been happening for quite a number of years. We know that these assassinations have been conducted by Israel in collaboration, or at least with the full knowledge of the United States. So these are very concerning developments, especially now. Firstly, correctly, as Ambassador said, the Middle East is facing serious challenges that in some of the countries are really, tearing the social fabric of those societies apart. In this regard, we think of Yemen, where Yemenis are being starved into submission, where Yemenis are bombed by the Saudi Air Force, with the participation of the Emiratis, the UAE, of course, with British, American, and French-made bombs and other ordinances. Of course, at some point, you will recall that U.S. warplanes were actually refueling Saudi airplanes as they were bombing the people of Yemen. We know what is happening in Syria. It's been happening since 2011. That country is, for all practical intents and purposes, has been partitioned, by one portion, um, you know, under the control of the legitimate government of the Syrian Arab Republic, the other part under, especially the oil-rich part of it, on the other side of the Euphrates, occupied by American forces. Of course, there is still a portion of Idlib province that is still under ISIS control and other, terrorist elements that are operating in the area. There's the Kobani and other areas that is being occupied by Turkey. And of course, other areas that are also occupied by the Kurds. And so what you are seeing really is essentially Syria being torn, into bits and pieces, and each of these players trying to run away with a piece of the Syrian Arab Republic. I'm raising these things, because I think it provides context for what is happening. Of course, Iraq as well is under threat. Still, some terrorists are still operating in Iraq, especially in northern Iraq. And so you have all these developments, in that part of our world, and especially in areas where Iran is involved. Of course, as Iran has been playing a major role in trying to restore the situation to stability and a sense of calm and trying to find lasting solutions. We've heard Foreign Minister Javad Zarif on many occasions calling for a comprehensive peace settlement for all the issues, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it's in Syria, and Yemen, and so on. So, and of course, as we've heard from Ambassador General Qasem Soleimani was a linchpin for the Iranian people in trying to find a lasting, peaceful solution to the problems afflicting that part of the region. So, having said that, what do we see? I think at an international level, one, we must realize that what we've seen with the assassination of both Qasem Soleimani, the general, and the scientist, is really a breakdown of international law. Um, Iran and the United States or Israel are not at war with each other. General Soleimani was an official government person. He was a general of the legitimate and only army of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is a government institution. Now, of course, our friends in the West have all these views that they have about the Revolutionary Guards. Well, like the CIA, like the South African National Defense Force in our case, like the US Army, and all other government institutions, the Revolutionary Guards are a government, are a state institution of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so to have one country assassinate the official of another country is unheard of in international. In fact, it's a violation, it's a gross violation of international law. And this should not only be condemned as an inhumane act in and of itself, though it is, but it is also a gross violation of international law. I mean, can you imagine if countries start assassinating the officials of other countries? What will happen to this notion of international law? And so it's a shame, really, that we haven't seen this kind of righteous indignation and moral outrage, especially within the United States itself. Perhaps largely because there is a consensus of sort, really, on matters of war amongst the American elites and to a large extent amongst ordinary Americans. Once their country is in a situation of conflict, Americans and their elites have the tendency to rally around their military, and so we have seen this kind of lager mentality even in the face of such obvious evil. Where and of course such a dangerous act of assassinating the official of one country. However, we take heart from the Iraqi people who also, of course, have lost their own leader in the same airstrike, who was equally instrumental with General Soleimani in defeating the Islamic State, in Mosul and elsewhere in Iraq, and of course in Syria and so on. So, but I think there's another aspect that we have to perhaps cast our eyes at, and that is really the lawlessness, the lack of respect for international law displayed by what can be termed as nothing else other than a rogue regime in the United States. What we see, of course, is the unilateral sanctions, especially in such a difficult time of COVID-19. Sanctions visited upon the people of Iran, of Iraq, of Venezuela, of Cuba, and elsewhere. These sanctions really are meant to bring those people to their knees, to starve them into surrender, to starve them into giving up, their sovereignty as peoples, and this must be rejected by all progressive people around the world. You also have the question of Palestine, which, as it were, is now really has been put on the back burner of international politics. The United Nations has been impotent, really, in resolving a problem they created in the first place. All institutions of international law are seemingly paralyzed in doing anything about the Palestinian question. You see a so-called normalization by the Middle Eastern Arab states and some states in North Africa. A normalization, of course, that not only undermines the establishment of a Palestinian state, but also undermines the very tenets of the Arab Peace Initiative, which offered Israel, peace with its neighbors in exchange for the creation of a viable and contiguous Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders, and of course dealing with the issues of the right of return of refugees and so on and so on. So it essentially is a betrayal of the Palestinian people and their struggle. Fortunately for us, the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran have remained steadfast in their support for the freedom of Palestinians. And Ambassador, we salute you, we salute the people of the Islamic Republic, and wish to reiterate our own commitment to not resting until the people of Palestine are free. I think finally, Sis Dudu, I think there's two other critical issues that we really have to, look at, especially within the context of COVID-19. The one is to take a serious look at the situation as it pertains to Iran, how Iran is, dealing with COVID-19, and I think it would be good to perhaps just get a sense from the ambassador, given the sanctions that make it impossible for Iran to import the necessary, medicines and equipment that they need to fight the pandemic, how they are dealing with it as a people. And then secondly, of course, the very same questions as they pertain to the people of Palestine, who of course are still under the occupation, which occupation is indeed, strengthened even under these conditions to ensure that Palestinians don't receive, medication. We have seen examples of Palestinians being denied access to hospitals, access to medical services, and of course, not only do our hearts, go out to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, our Iranian brothers and sisters, Venezuelan brothers and sisters, Cubans, and so on. But also, within the context of our solidarity struggle, how we ensure that we highlight these particular issues, especially within the context of COVID-19. But as a parting shot, in this segment, let me assure the ambassador that Africa for Palestine is committed to upholding the rights of Palestinian people as much as we are committed to upholding the rights of the Iranian people to determine their own future as a people. That is a sacred right that Africa for Palestine has committed itself to the human rights of all human beings living on this planet. So within that context, Ambassador, we recommit ourselves as your friends in this struggle, going forward. And we looking forward to working with you and strengthening our cooperation, on programs that will engage these very serious matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Magama. That was a mouthful, and it was very truthful to hear from you, especially coming from a child of the ANC. It's very true. The pandemic has shifted the struggle of the Palestinians from the illegal occupation, whilst the apartheid Israel continues its atrocities within Palestine, and people of Palestine are somehow now, by the international world or community, forgotten in terms of what occupation has done to them. People are now concentrating on the pandemic. But as Africa for Palestine, we urge people not to forget or not to shift from what the apartheid Israel is doing within the region and the streets of Palestine. Occupation is still rife in Palestine. It's still continuing. Everything that we knew before of home demolitions, of land grabbing, of moving Palestinians away from their land, it's still continued by the apartheid Israel. So as Africa for Palestine, we still urge you, we still urge the people out there to continue their solidarity and their support for Palestinians, and never forget that occupation is still there. We still need to see a free Palestine whilst we are still alive and whilst the pandemic is still going on. And thanking the ambassador from Iran for sharing with us what they are thinking of Palestine as Iranians, and continue to work with other Middle East people to work towards supporting Palestine, and never forget them that they are your Arab brothers and they still need you. With all of that, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing, Comrade Magama, your inputs from South Africa, and thank you, Ambassador, for sharing with us what you think should be done within and outside of Palestine and Iran and South Africa towards the Palestinian people. And just as a last word from the ambassador in Iran regarding Palestine, can you say something just in closing, Ambassador, in terms of what Iran is looking to do to continue their solidarity of Palestine from what Major Soleimani was doing? Over to you, Ambassador. Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much. About Palestine, what I quoted from General Soleimani is our official stand and position. Our position on Palestine is firm and unchangeable. We believe that these shows of normalizations uh, neither change the rights of the Palestinian people nor the occupation of the Zionist regime. We do not recognize the fake Israeli regime, and we emphasize that only the Palestinian people have the right to decide on their rights and their fate. This is our official position towards Israel, and we believe that the resistance is the only way to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you, Comrade Magama, for joining us, and thank you, Ambassador, for joining us and sharing this fruitful words with us. Africa for Palestine is very thankful for all the people who have joined us, and we have now come to an end of the webinar. But Africa for Palestine urges everyone to continue supporting the people of Palestine, but mostly continue currently sharing and going through with the commemoration of Major Soleimani as we go throughout the month in remembering the big work, the major works that he has done towards Palestine and towards Iran and towards freeing the world in every possible way where justice is needed. We thank you very much as Africa for Palestine, and that's it from us. Thank you all.